I buried my daughter without her husband standing beside her. They told me Jason was too broken to face the funeral, too overwhelmed, too grief-stricken. But as I stood there staring at Emily's casket, something inside me refused to believe that. Sophie held my hand the entire time, silent, tense, like she already knew something I didn't. Then just hours later, my phone lit up. A photo. Jason. Sitting in a bar, drink in hand, smiling. On the same day we said goodbye to Emily, and in that moment, I felt it deep in my bones. This wasn't just grief. Something was wrong. Before I go on, I want to ask you something. What would you think if someone you trusted did this on the day of your child's funeral? If this moment hit you the way it hit me, please, take a second to like this video. It truly helps more than you know. And if you want to hear the full story, I invite you to subscribe and stay with me. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there right now? I read every message. Now, let me tell you who my daughter really was. My daughter, Emily Carter, was the kind of woman people trusted instantly. You know the type. The one who made eye contact when you spoke, who remembered small details about your life, who made you feel seen without trying too hard. She was a pediatric nurse at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and even after 12-hour shifts, she would come home and still have enough warmth left in her to help Sophie with homework, call me to check if I'd eaten, or bake something simple just to make the house feel alive. She didn't just take care of patients, she took care of everyone, including me. I remember one winter a few years before all of this, I caught a bad flu. I hadn't told her how sick I really was. I didn't want to worry her, but somehow she knew. She showed up at my front door with soup medicine, and that look on her face, the one that said she wasn't leaving until she knew I was okay. That was Emily. Steady, loving, strong, in quiet ways most people never noticed. And for a long time, I believed she had built a good life for herself. She married Jason when she was 30. He was charming, at least that's what everyone said. He worked as a regional sales manager for a logistics company, always well-dressed, always confident. He knew how to talk to people. At family dinners, he would compliment my cooking, ask polite questions, laugh at the right moments. On the surface, they looked perfect. They bought a modest but beautiful home in a quiet suburb outside Cincinnati. Not too flashy, but warm, comfortable, the kind of place where neighbors waved when you drove by. Sophie was born 2 years later, and for a while I truly believed my daughter had everything she deserved. A loving husband, a healthy child, a stable life. But when I look back now, I realize how much I missed. Or maybe, how much I chose not to see. It didn't happen all at once. The changes were small at first, subtle enough to ignore. Emily used to call me almost every evening, sometimes just for 10 minutes while she washed dishes, sometimes longer when she needed to vent about work or laugh about something Sophie said. Then those calls became less frequent. At first I told myself she was just busy. Nursing is exhausting. Long shifts, emotional strain, it takes a lot out of a person. But then something else changed. When she did call, her voice felt different, still kind, still gentle, but quieter, measured, like she was choosing her words carefully. There were moments when I would ask her a simple question, "Are you okay?" And there would be just a second too long of a pause before she answered, "I'm fine, Mom." Always that same answer. Always just a little too quick. I remember one Sunday afternoon I invited them over for lunch. It used to be a regular thing. Emily loved those slow, easy afternoons where Sophie could play in the backyard and we could sit around the table talking about nothing important. That day, Emily canceled. She said Sophie had a cold. The next week she canceled again, and the week after that. Eventually, the invitations stopped feeling natural, like I was intruding on something I wasn't meant to see. When I did see them, it was usually at their house, and Jason was almost always there. That might sound normal to some people, but it wasn't how things used to be. Emily and I had always had our own space, our own conversations, but now Jason was part of everything. If I asked Emily about work, Jason would answer first. She's been swamped, he'd say, before she could even open her mouth. If I asked about Sophie's school, he'd jump in again. She's doing great, top of her class. And Emily would just smile, nod, agree. At the time, I told myself it was nothing. Some couples are just like that, I thought. More intertwined. But there was one moment I can't stop replaying in my mind. It was about 6 months before Emily died. We were sitting in her kitchen. Sophie was upstairs, and Jason had stepped out to take a phone call. It was the first time in a long while that Emily and I were alone together. I remember thinking how tired she looked. Not physically exactly, but worn down. Like something inside her had been slowly eroding. I reached across the table and touched her hand. "Emily," I said softly, "are you happy?" She looked at me, and for just a second, just 1 second, I saw something break through. Fear. Real, unmistakable fear. Then it was gone. She pulled her hand back slightly and smiled. "Of course I am, Mom." Jason walked back into the room right then, and whatever that moment was, it disappeared. I didn't push. I wish I had. After that, the distance between us grew in ways I didn't fully understand. Emily started missing family gatherings more often. She stopped coming by on her days off. Even when she did visit, she always seemed to be watching the clock, like she had somewhere else she needed to be, or someone she needed to check in with. And then there were the little things, the way she flinched just slightly when Jason raised his voice, even if he wasn't angry, the way she deferred to him on decisions that I knew she used to make confidently on her own, the way Sophie sometimes looked at her father with a kind of quiet tension that didn't belong in a child's eyes. At the time, I told myself I was imagining things, because the alternative was too hard to accept. No mother wants to believe her child might be unhappy in her own home. No mother wants to believe she missed the signs. But standing there at Emily's funeral, holding Sophie's hand, staring at that empty space where Jason should have been, and then seeing that photo of him in a bar smiling like nothing had happened, all those small moments came rushing back. Every canceled visit, every forced smile, every silence. And for the first time, I allowed myself to think something I had been avoiding for months. Maybe my daughter hadn't been living the life I thought she had. Maybe she had been surviving something she never told me. And as that thought settled into my chest heavy and undeniable, I realized something else. If Jason could sit in a bar laughing on the day we buried Emily, then maybe I didn't know him at all. And if I didn't know him, then I had to start asking a much more dangerous question. What else didn't I know? The night Emily died was cold and wet, the kind of Ohio night where the roads turn slick without warning and the sky feels heavier than it should. I remember it clearly even now. It was a Tuesday. I had just finished washing the dishes when my phone rang. It was late, almost 10:30 p.m., and something in my chest tightened before I even picked up. Mothers have a way of knowing when a call carries bad news, but it wasn't the police who called me first. It was Jason. His voice was shaking, breath uneven, words tripping over each other. "Lauren, there's been an accident." That's how he said it. Not Emily's name. Not anything clear, just an accident. I remember gripping the edge of the kitchen counter so hard my knuckles turned white. What accident, I asked. Emily. Her car. She didn't make it. For a moment, I didn't understand what he meant. My mind refused to process it. Didn't make it where? To work. To the hospital. But then he said it again, slower this time. She's gone. And just like that, my world split in half. The drive to the hospital is a blur. I don't remember grabbing my coat. I don't remember locking the door. I don't even remember how I got behind the wheel. All I remember is the sound of rain hitting the windshield and the way my hands wouldn't stop trembling. When I arrived, everything felt too quiet. Hospitals are never truly silent, but that night the noise felt distant, like I was underwater. A nurse led me into a small room, and there she was, my Emily. Lying still in a hospital bed, her skin pale, her hair damp from the rain. She looked like she was sleeping, peaceful, too peaceful. I walked over to her slowly, like any sudden movement might break something fragile. I reached out and touched her hand. It was cold. That's when it became real. That's when I knew there was no mistake, no miracle waiting, no second chance. My daughter was gone. The doctors told me it was a single-car accident. She had been driving home after a late shift. The roads were slick. Visibility was low. They believed she lost control of the vehicle on a curve and collided with a guardrail. It was quick, they said. She didn't suffer. Those are the words people use when there's nothing else left to offer. I nodded like I understood, like I accepted it. But something inside me didn't settle. Not completely. Later that night, after they had moved Emily's body and the hospital had emptied out, I sat alone in my car in the parking lot. That's when Jason showed up. He walked toward me slowly, shoulders slumped, eyes red. He looked like a grieving husband. He opened the passenger door and slid into the seat beside me without saying anything at first. For a few seconds, we just sat there. Then he started crying, loud, shaking, almost theatrical in the way it filled the space. I should have been there, he said between sobs. I should have picked her up. I knew the weather was bad. I didn't respond right away. I was still trying to breathe, still trying to exist in a world where my daughter no longer did. What time did she leave work? I finally asked. He hesitated. I think around 9, maybe a little after. I frowned slightly. Emily's schedule had been consistent for years. Her shifts usually ended earlier than that unless she picked up extra hours. But I let it go. Grief makes you doubt your own memory. Jason continued talking about how strong Emily was, how much he loved her, how he didn't know how he was going to raise Sophie without her. And for a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. But then something small caught my attention. He kept repeating certain phrases, like he was trying to convince himself, or me. I loved her so much. I would never hurt her. I don't understand how this happened. At the time, I told myself it was normal. People say strange things when they're grieving. They cling to words. They try to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. But now, looking back, those words feel different, not like grief, like defense. The next morning, I went to their house to be with Sophie. She was sitting on the couch wrapped in a blanket, her small body curled in on itself. She looked up at me when I walked in. Her eyes were dry, too dry. Children don't always cry the way adults expect them to. Sometimes the shock holds the tears back. Sometimes they don't fully understand what's happened yet. I sat beside her and pulled her into my arms. She didn't resist, but she didn't relax either. "Grandma?" she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mommy isn't coming back, is she?" My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart," I said gently. "She isn't." Sophie nodded slowly, like she already knew. We sat there for a long time saying nothing, just breathing, just existing in the silence that Emily had left behind. And then out of nowhere, Sophie said something that made my entire body go still. "Mommy said we might move soon." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She shrugged slightly, her fingers playing with the edge of the blanket. "She said we might go somewhere new, somewhere Daddy couldn't find us." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. Why would she say that? I asked carefully. Sophie shook her head. "I don't know. She said it one night when she thought I was asleep." My heart started pounding. "Did she say anything else?" Sophie hesitated. Then she looked up at me, and for the first time I saw something in her eyes that no child should carry. Fear. She said everything would be okay once we were gone. Gone. Not moved. Not relocated. Gone. I felt a chill run down my spine. Emily had never mentioned anything like that to me. Not once. Not in all our conversations. Not even in her most distant moments. And yet, she had said it to Sophie. In secret. Like it was something she couldn't say out loud. Something she couldn't risk anyone else hearing. Including me. I pulled Sophie closer, my mind racing. Why would Emily want to leave? Why would she need to hide from her own husband? And why hadn't she told me unless she was trying to protect me? Or worse, unless she didn't have time. That thought settled in my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. Because suddenly the accident didn't feel as simple as it had the night before. Suddenly, it didn't feel like an accident at all. And as I sat there holding my granddaughter, listening to the quiet echo of my daughter's last unspoken fears, I realized something that terrified me more than grief ever could. Emily hadn't just died. She had been planning to leave, planning to disappear, planning to take Sophie somewhere safe. And now, she was gone. And the only person who knew exactly why was the man who didn't even show up to bury her. I didn't confront Jason right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because something in me understood that once I did, there would be no going back. Whatever fragile illusions still existed between us would shatter completely, and I needed time. Time to think. Time to listen. Time to understand what Emily had been trying to say without ever saying it directly. But Jason didn't give me much of that. 2 days after the funeral, he showed up at my house unannounced. I was in the kitchen standing by the sink staring out at the backyard without really seeing it when I heard the knock. It was firm, controlled, not the kind of knock a grieving man makes. I opened the door. Jason stood there in a neatly pressed button-down shirt, his posture straight, his expression composed, too composed. "Lauren," he said softly, "I thought I'd check on you. And Sophie." I stepped aside to let him in. Sophie was upstairs in the guest room. She hadn't wanted to go back to her own house yet, and I hadn't pushed her. Something about the way she clung to me made it clear home didn't feel safe to her anymore. Jason glanced around the living room as he stepped inside, his eyes moving quickly, taking things in. Not lingering. Scanning. That was the first thing I noticed. "Where's Sophie?" he asked. "Upstairs," I replied. He nodded, but didn't call out to her. Didn't rush to see her. Didn't even move toward the stairs. Instead, he turned to me. I think it's time we talk about arrangements, he said. The words landed strangely. Arrangements, I repeated. For Sophie, for the house, for Emily's accounts. He paused. There's a lot to handle. A lot to handle. My daughter had been in the ground for less than 48 hours, and he was already talking about logistics. I folded my arms slowly, studying his face. You didn't come to the funeral? I said. There it was. The thing I had been holding back. Jason's expression shifted, but only slightly. I told you, he said, his voice measured. I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand there and pretend she was really gone. I felt something sharp rise in my chest. But you could sit in a bar, I said quietly. For the first time, his composure cracked. Just for a second. I needed air, he snapped. I needed to get out of the house. You don't understand what I'm going through. No, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. I don't think I do. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Thick. Jason ran a hand through his hair, pacing once across the living room before stopping again. You're judging me, he said. That's not fair, Lauren. People grieve differently. I'm not judging you, I replied. I'm trying to understand you. That seemed to unsettle him more than anger would have, because anger he could push back against. But quiet questions. Those were harder to control. He exhaled sharply. Look, he said, his tone softening again. Everything's a mess right now. The last thing we need is tension between us. Sophie needs stability. At the mention of Sophie, I felt my resolve harden. She's staying here, I said. Jason blinked. For now, I added. She's not ready to go back. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, he said. For now. But there was something in the way he said it. Something reluctant, like he was agreeing temporarily. His eyes moved again briefly to the hallway, the stairs, the rooms beyond. That same scanning motion, like he was looking for something. Have you gone through Emily's things yet? He asked suddenly. The question came too quickly, too casually. I kept my expression neutral. Not really, I said. It's too soon, he nodded, but I could see the tension in his jaw. If you find anything important, he said, documents, paperwork, you should give them to me. I need to handle the financial side of things. There it was again. Money, control, responsibility. All the things he seemed far more focused on than grief. I'll let you know, I said. Jason studied me for a moment like he was trying to read something beneath the surface. Then he smiled, a small, polite smile, the same one he had used at family dinners for years. I just want to do right by Emily, he said. The words felt hollow, not because of what they meant, but because of how they sounded, rehearsed. We stood there in silence for a few seconds longer before he turned toward the door. I'll come by again soon, he said, to see Sophie. I nodded. He left without another word. As soon as the door closed behind him, I felt the air in the house shift, like something heavy had just passed through. I stood there for a long time staring at the door, replaying every moment of that conversation in my head. The way he avoided the funeral, the way he reacted to the bar photo, the way he kept bringing up documents, the way he looked around my house like he was searching for something, and then the way Sophie had flinched when she heard his voice earlier. I hadn't noticed it at first, but now thinking back, it was there. Small, quick, but real. A child's instinct. A warning I had almost missed. I turned and walked slowly toward the stairs. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I reached the guest room, I found Sophie sitting on the bed, her knees pulled to her chest. She looked up at me as I entered. "Is he gone?" she asked quietly. I nodded. Her shoulders relaxed just slightly. That was all I needed to see. I sat down beside her. "Sophie," I said gently, "can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Did your mom ever talk to you about leaving?" I asked. "About going somewhere else?" Sophie hesitated. Then she nodded again. "Sometimes she said, 'When Daddy wasn't home.'" My heart tightened. "What did she say?" Sophie looked down at her hands. "She said we might have to go away for a while," she whispered. "She said it would be safer. Safer." That word echoed in my mind. Safer from what or from who? Did she ever say why? I asked softly. Sophie shook her head, but she was scared, she added. I could tell. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady myself. Emily had been afraid enough to plan an escape, afraid enough to hide it from me. And now, she was gone. And the man she had been afraid of was walking freely in and out of our lives, talking about documents, talking about control, talking about what needed to be done next. I opened my eyes and looked at Sophie, at the small, fragile piece of my daughter that was still here. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Grief was still there. It always would be. But beneath it, something stronger was beginning to take shape. Clarity. Resolve. A quiet, steady determination that I hadn't felt before. I didn't know exactly what Jason had done. Not yet. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Emily had been trying to tell me something, and I had missed it. I wouldn't make that mistake again. If there were answers hidden in her life, in her home, in the things she left behind, I would find them, no matter how long it took, no matter how difficult it became. Because this wasn't just about understanding what happened to my daughter anymore. It was about protecting the only part of her I still had. And as I sat there beside Sophie, holding her close, I made a promise I would never say out loud. I would not let Jason control the story. Not this time. Not ever. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's face the way it had looked in the hospital, too still, too quiet. And then Jason's face in that photo, smiling under dim bar lights like nothing in his world had changed. Those two images didn't belong in the same reality. And yet, they did. By morning, I knew one thing for certain. If Emily had been trying to leave, if she had been afraid, then she had left something behind. Something she couldn't risk telling me directly. Something she hoped I would find. So I called Danielle. She arrived within the hour, her hair pulled back into a tight bun, her expression already serious before I even opened the door. "I didn't want to come sooner," she said as she stepped inside. "I didn't know how much you knew." "I don't know anything," I replied, "but I think I'm supposed to." Danielle nodded slowly like she had been expecting that answer. "Sophie?" she asked. "Upstairs," I said. "Watching a movie." Danielle lowered her voice. "Then we should move quickly. We didn't go to my house. We went to Emily's. Jason had given me a spare key years ago, back when everything still felt normal." I hesitated before unlocking the door, my hand trembling slightly, not from grief this time, but from something sharper. Fear. And something else. Instinct. The house smelled faintly of cleaning products, like someone had tried to erase something. It wasn't messy. In fact, it was too clean, too untouched, like a place where life had paused mid-breath. Danielle stepped in behind me, closing the door quietly. Where would she hide things, she asked. I looked around. The living room was exactly how Emily liked it. Neutral tones, soft lighting, everything in its place. No obvious clues, no signs of panic or urgency. But Emily had always been careful, thoughtful. If she hid something, it wouldn't be somewhere obvious. She wouldn't keep it out here, I said. Jason would find it. Danielle nodded. Then we checked the places he wouldn't think to look. We started in the bedroom. Emily's closet was still full clothes, neatly arranged, shoes lined up in pairs. Nothing looked disturbed. But when Danielle opened the bottom drawer of the dresser, she paused. "What is this?" she murmured. Inside, tucked beneath a stack of folded sweaters, was a small envelope. Plain. Unmarked. Danielle pulled it out and opened it carefully. Inside were bank statements. Not one or two. Dozens. All printed. All highlighted in certain places. I stepped closer, my breath catching as I scanned the pages. "These aren't from their joint account," I said. Danielle shook her head. "No," she said quietly. "This is a separate account." My heart started pounding. "Emily had her own account," I asked. Danielle hesitated. "I think she opened it recently," she said. "She mentioned something about needing independence." Independence. From her husband. I flipped through the statements, my hands trembling. There were deposits, small, consistent amounts, probably from Emily's paychecks. But then there were withdrawals, large ones, irregular, transferred out to accounts with unfamiliar numbers. "Do you recognize any of these?" Danielle asked. I shook my head. "No." Danielle's expression darkened. "Then that's a problem." We kept searching. In the back of the closet behind a row of winter coats, we found a small metal lockbox. It wasn't locked. Inside was a notebook. Emily's handwriting covered every page, tight, controlled, deliberate. I sat down on the edge of the bed as I opened it. The first few pages were filled with dates. Numbers. Short phrases. Transfer. 5,200. Check signed. Not mine. Account moved again. My chest tightened. She was tracking something, I whispered. Danielle leaned over my shoulder. She was documenting it, she corrected. We turned the pages more quickly now. Forgery. Why is this under my name? "Ask him again." He lied. Each entry felt like a piece of something larger, something darker. "Lauren," Danielle said softly. "I think Jason was moving money through her accounts." I looked up at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said carefully, "if these are accounts in Emily's name and money is being transferred without her full understanding, that could be fraud." The word hit me like a physical blow. Fraud. Jason, my son-in-law, Emily's husband, the man who stood beside her for years, or at least appeared to. I looked back down at the notebook, my vision blurring slightly. She knew I said. Danielle nodded. She knew something was wrong. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of that realization settling between us. Then Danielle spoke again. "Do you remember anything about a P.O. box?" she asked. I frowned. "No." "Why?" "She mentioned it once," Danielle said. "Said she needed somewhere safe to receive documents." My stomach dropped. "She was hiding things from him," I said. "Yes," Danielle replied. "And she was doing it carefully." We searched the rest of the house more urgently now. Drawers, cabinets, shelves, every place Emily might have tucked something away. In the kitchen, everything looked normal. Too normal. No papers, no notes. But when I opened the small drawer beside the refrigerator, the one Emily used for random things, I found a receipt. A P.O. box rental, dated 3 months before her death. I handed it to Danielle. "She really did it," I said. Danielle nodded slowly. She was building something, she said. A case, or an exit plan, or both. We stood there, the silence growing heavier with every passing second. Then something else came back to me. Something Reverend Reed had said after the funeral. At the time, it hadn't seemed important. But now... "Danielle," I said slowly. "Reverend Reed mentioned something about Jason asking about insurance." Danielle looked up sharply. "When? Before the burial?" I said. "He said Jason was eager, asking about paperwork, timelines." Danielle's face went pale. "That's not normal," she said. "No," I agreed. "It's not." We looked at each other, the same thought forming between us without needing to be spoken. Money, control, secrecy. And now, insurance. I felt a chill run through my entire body. If Jason had been moving money, if Emily had found out, if she had been planning to leave, then her death. I couldn't finish the thought. I wasn't ready to say it out loud, not yet, but the possibility was there, lurking, growing stronger with every piece of evidence we uncovered. Danielle closed the notebook gently. "We need to be careful," she said. "If Jason realizes what we're doing..." "He already suspects something," I interrupted. "He asked about documents yesterday. He's looking for something." Danielle nodded. "Then whatever he's looking for, we have to find it first." I looked around the room one more time. At Emily's clothes, her bed, the life she had built, the life she had been trying to escape. And I felt something shift inside me again. Not just grief, not just anger, but purpose. Clear, focused, unshakable. Emily hadn't left me answers, not directly, but she had left me a trail, and I was going to follow it, no matter where it led. I didn't go home right away after we left Emily's house. I couldn't. Sitting still felt impossible, like if I stopped moving, everything I had just learned would collapse on top of me. The notebook, the bank statements, the P.O. box. All of it was circling in my mind, connecting into something I wasn't ready to name yet. But there was one place I needed to go. Emily's workplace. Cincinnati Children's Hospital had always been a second home to her. She spoke about it with a kind of quiet pride, even on the hardest days. If there was a part of her life untouched by Jason, untangled from whatever he had been doing, it would be there. Danielle insisted on coming with me. We walked through the hospital corridors side by side, the smell of antiseptic and the soft hum of machines filling the air. Everything felt painfully familiar. I had visited Emily here before, watched her move through these halls with confidence and compassion. Now she was gone, and I was walking through her world like a stranger. At the nurse's station, a woman looked up as we approached. She was in her early 40s with tired but kind eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked gently. I swallowed. I'm Lauren Ferguson," I said. "Emily Carter's mother." Her expression softened immediately. "Oh," she said quietly. "Mrs. Ferguson, I'm so sorry. Emily she was one of the best." The words hit me harder than I expected. "Thank you," I managed. "This is Danielle Brooks," I added. "Emily's friend." The nurse nodded. "I'm Karen," she said. We worked together for years. Karen stepped out from behind the desk, lowering her voice. If you need anything at all, please let me know. I hesitated for a moment, then took a breath. There is something I said. Karen's expression shifted, attentive now. I need to ask you about Emily, I continued, about how she was recently. Karen didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced down the hallway, then back at me. Come with me, she said softly. She led us into a small break room and closed the door behind us. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Karen leaned against the counter and folded her arms. She wasn't herself, she said quietly. My heart tightened. What do you mean? Karen exhaled slowly. Emily was always calm, she said, even on the worst days. But lately, she was distracted, tense, like she had something on her mind she couldn't shake. Danielle and I exchanged a glance. Did she ever say what it was? Danielle asked. Karen shook her head. Not directly, she said. But there were moments. What kind of moments? I pressed. Karen hesitated, like she was choosing her words carefully. She started picking up extra shifts, she said. At first it didn't seem unusual. We all do it sometimes. But with Emily, it felt different. Different how I asked. She needed the money, Karen said. That's what she told me. The words didn't make sense. Emily didn't need extra money, I said. They were doing fine. Karen gave me a look I couldn't quite read. That's what I thought too, she said. But she kept saying she needed a cushion. Her exact word. A cushion. Against what? Was Jason having financial problems? Danielle asked. Karen shrugged. I don't know, she said. Emily didn't talk about him much. Not anymore. Not anymore. Another piece falling into place. There's something else, Karen added quietly. My chest tightened. What? Karen looked down at her hands for a moment before speaking again. About 2 weeks before the accident, she said I saw them arguing in the parking lot. My breath caught. Arguing? I repeated. Karen nodded. I was leaving my shift, she said. They didn't see me. Jason was standing really close to her. Too close. And Emily, she looked scared. The word echoed in my mind. Scared. Just like Sophie had said. What were they arguing about? Danielle asked. I couldn't hear everything Karen said, but I caught a few words. She hesitated again. Money, she said finally. And something about documents. Emily kept saying, I didn't sign that. I felt my knees weaken slightly and I reached for the edge of the table to steady myself. She didn't sign that. Forgery. The notebook. It was all connected. What did Jason do? I asked, my voice barely steady. Karen's jaw tightened. He grabbed her arm, she said. Not hard enough to leave marks, but hard enough that I noticed. My stomach turned. And Emily? I asked. She pulled away. Karen said. And she said something I'll never forget. I held my breath. She said, I'm not going to let you ruin me. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Crushing. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to picture it. Emily, standing in that parking lot, facing her husband. Afraid, but still fighting. Still standing her ground. When was the last time you saw her? Danielle asked gently. Karen thought for a moment. The night she died, she said. My heart stopped. What? She picked up an extra shift, Karen explained. She said she needed the hours. She seemed distracted. More than usual. Did anything happen during the shift? I asked. Karen shook her head. Not really, she said. But she left earlier than expected. That didn't make sense. She told Jason she finished late, I said slowly. Karen frowned. No, she said. She clocked out around 8:15. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Jason had said she left around 9. He had been wrong, or he had lied. Are you sure? Danielle asked. Karen nodded. I'm sure she said. I remember because she almost forgot to sign out. I had to remind her. I felt a cold wave of realization wash over me. Jason had given us the timeline. Jason had told the police when Emily left work. And now, that timeline didn't match. Karen, I said carefully, did Emily ever mention seeing a lawyer? Karen hesitated. Then she nodded. Once, she said. She asked me if I knew any good family attorneys. My heart clenched. What did you tell her? I asked. I gave her a name, Karen said. A friend of my sister's. Danielle stepped forward slightly. Do you remember the name she asked? Karen nodded again. I think so, she said. I can write it down for you. She grabbed a pen and scribbled something on a piece of paper, then handed it to Danielle. Danielle looked at it and went very still. What I asked. She looked up at me. That's the same firm Emily contacted, she said quietly. The confirmation hit me like a final piece locking into place. Emily had been preparing to leave. She had been gathering evidence. She had been building a case. And Jason had known, or at least suspected, which meant the argument, the lies, the timeline, the accident. None of it felt random anymore. None of it felt like chance. As we left the hospital, the world outside felt colder somehow, sharper, more dangerous. I turned to Danielle as we reached the parking lot. She was getting ready to leave him, I said. Danielle nodded. Yes, she said. She was. And he knew, I added. Danielle didn't answer right away, but she didn't have to, because we both understood what that meant. I looked up at the gray sky, my chest tightening as the truth began to take shape, still incomplete, still unproven but impossible to ignore. Emily hadn't just been unhappy. She had been trapped, and she had been trying to get out. But she hadn't made it. And now, the man she had been trying to escape was still free, still walking around, still pretending to grieve. And the deeper we dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about control, about fear, about something that had been building long before the night Emily died. And I had a feeling we were only just beginning to understand how far it really went. I didn't go back to Emily's house that same day. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to think. What we had found was already more than I could have imagined. The bank statements, the notebook, the argument in the parking lot, the timeline that didn't match Jason's version of events. Each piece alone might have meant nothing, but together, they formed something I couldn't ignore anymore. A pattern, a warning, a story Emily had been trying to tell, without ever saying it out loud. That night after Sophie had fallen asleep, I sat alone at my kitchen table with everything spread out in front of me. The notebook, the statements, the receipt for the P.O. box. I read through Emily's handwriting again, slower this time, more carefully, not just looking for facts, but for her. For the daughter I knew, the one who thought things through, who paid attention to detail, who didn't write anything without a reason. And then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the last page of the notebook in the bottom corner, there was a small symbol. A star. Faint. Almost like she had drawn it absent-mindedly. But Emily didn't do things absent-mindedly. I leaned closer. Next to the star, barely visible, were 2 letters. SB. I frowned. Danielle, I whispered, reaching for my phone. She picked up on the second ring. I think I found something, I said. 20 minutes later, she was back at my house. We sat at the table together, staring down at the page. SB. Danielle murmured, "That could be anything." Or someone, I said. She nodded slowly. Or somewhere. I thought about everything we had found so far, the secrecy, the careful documentation, the way Emily had hidden pieces of information in different places. She hadn't kept everything together. She had scattered it. On purpose. So if one part was found, the rest would still be safe. She left us a trail, I said quietly. We just have to follow it. Danielle leaned back slightly, thinking. Where would she hide something important, she asked. Somewhere Jason would never think to look. I didn't answer right away, because suddenly I knew. Or at least, I had a feeling. Sophie, I said. Danielle blinked. What? Sophie's things, I clarified. Her drawings, her toys, her keepsakes. Danielle's eyes widened slightly. You think Emily would hide something there? I nodded. If she wanted to protect it, if she knew Jason might search the house, she'd put it somewhere he wouldn't bother to look. Danielle exhaled slowly. That's actually smart. Emily was smart, I said softly. We went upstairs together. Sophie was asleep, curled up under her blanket, her small hand clutching a stuffed animal. I paused in the doorway for a moment, watching her, my chest tightening with a mix of love and fear. Everything I was about to do. It wasn't just about the past. It was about her future. We moved quietly into the spare room where I had placed the box Sophie brought from home, a small plastic container filled with drawings, school papers, birthday cards, and little trinkets, memories, innocent, untouched. I knelt beside it and lifted the lid. At first glance, everything looked ordinary. Crayons, construction paper, a few glitter-covered crafts. Danielle crouched beside me. We go through everything, she whispered. I nodded. We started carefully, one piece at a time. Drawings of stick figures, cards Emily had written to Sophie, little notes with hearts and stars. And then, I found it. A small velvet pouch, blue, tucked beneath a stack of drawings. It didn't belong there. Not with the rest of the things. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Lauren, Danielle whispered. I didn't answer. I just opened it. Inside was a flash drive. Small, black, ordinary. But I knew it wasn't. This is it, I said, my voice barely audible. Danielle didn't argue. We went downstairs, immediately closing the door quietly behind us. My laptop was already on the table. For a moment I hesitated, because I knew once I opened those files, there would be no more doubt, no more questions, only answers. And I wasn't sure I was ready for them, but I didn't have a choice. I inserted the flash drive. The screen flickered. A folder appeared, untitled. I clicked it. Inside were several files, videos, audio recordings, screenshots, documents. My heart pounded as I opened the first video. It was Emily, sitting in what looked like her car. Her face was pale, her eyes red like she had been crying. For a moment she didn't speak. She just looked into the camera, and then she took a breath. "If you're watching this," she said, her voice unsteady, "it means I didn't get the chance to explain everything." My throat closed. Danielle reached for my hand. I barely felt it. I didn't want to believe it at first. Emily continued. "I thought I was overreacting, that I misunderstood something." She shook her head slightly. But I didn't. Tears filled her eyes. "Jason has been moving money," she said, "through accounts in my name, without my permission." Danielle inhaled sharply beside me. "I found documents I never signed," Emily went on. "Loans, transfers, things I don't even fully understand." Her voice trembled. "When I confronted him, he denied everything. Then he got angry." I closed my eyes for a moment, the memory of Karen's words echoing in my mind. He grabbed her arm. She looked scared. "I'm scared," Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how far this goes. I don't know what he's capable of." The words hit me like a physical blow. "I've been documenting everything," she said, "just in case." She looked directly into the camera. "If something happens to me, please don't believe everything Jason says." Silence filled the room. I opened my eyes again, staring at her face on the screen. My daughter, afraid, alone, and still trying to protect us. The video ended. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Danielle whispered, "There's more." I nodded slowly. My hand moved to the next file. An audio recording. I pressed play. At first there was only static, then voices, Emily's, and Jason's. "You lied to me," Emily said, her voice shaking but firm. "I didn't lie," Jason replied sharply. "You used my name," she shot back. "You forged my signature." There was a pause. Then Jason's voice again, lower this time. "Lower this. You don't understand how any of this works." "Then explain it to me," Emily said. Another pause. Longer. He didn't answer. Instead, his tone shifted. Colder. More dangerous. "You need to stop digging," he said quietly. My blood ran cold. "I'm not going to ignore this," Emily replied. "I'm not going to let you ruin me." There it was again, the same words Karen had heard. "You think you can just walk away?" Jason said. "I will," Emily said, "with Sophie." Silence. Heavy. "And then," Jason spoke again. "If you do that," he said slowly, "you'll lose everything." The recording cut off. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. The room felt smaller somehow, tighter, like the walls were closing in. "He threatened her," Danielle whispered. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Everything we had suspected, everything we had feared. It was real. Emily hadn't imagined it. She hadn't overreacted. She had been right, and now she was gone. I leaned back in my chair, my chest rising and falling too quickly. For a moment, grief threatened to swallow me whole again. But this time, it didn't. Because beneath it, something else was stronger. Fury, cold, focused, unyielding. I looked at Danielle. He knew I said. She didn't ask what I meant. She already understood. He knew she was leaving. I continued. He knew she had evidence. Danielle nodded slowly. And now he's looking for it. I thought about the way he had scanned my house, the way he had asked about documents, the way he had pushed for control. "He's not grieving," I said quietly. "He's hunting." And for the first time since Emily died, I wasn't just asking questions anymore. I was starting to see the truth. I didn't wait until morning. The moment the last recording ended, I closed the laptop, grabbed my coat, and told Danielle we were leaving. Now she asked, glancing toward the stairs where Sophie was sleeping. "Yes," I said. "We can't sit on this." Danielle studied my face for a second, then nodded. "Okay, but we do this carefully." We made sure Sophie was still asleep, locked the doors, and drove straight to the police station. The night air was cold, sharp against my skin, but I barely felt it. My mind was too focused, too locked on one thought. Emily knew. Emily was afraid. And Emily had been right. When we arrived, the station was quieter than I expected. Just a few officers moving through the halls, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Danielle spoke first at the front desk, calm and precise, explaining that we had new information related to a recent fatal accident. Within minutes, we were escorted into a small office. Detective Maria Alvarez walked in shortly after. She was in her mid-40s, sharp-eyed, composed, the kind of person who didn't waste time pretending. She looked at me first, then at Danielle, then at the laptop in my hands. "Mrs. Ferguson," she said. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I replied, "but I don't think my daughter's death was an accident." She didn't react immediately, just gestured toward the chair. "Sit," she said. "We did." I placed the laptop on the desk, my fingers tightening around the edge for a moment before letting go. "My daughter left this," I said. "Videos, recordings, documents." She was being threatened. She was trying to leave her husband. Detective Alvarez's expression shifted subtle, but I saw it. Interest? Concern. "Let's take a look," she said. We played the video first. Emily's face filled the screen again, her voice trembling as she explained what Jason had been doing. I watched the detective as she watched my daughter. She didn't interrupt, didn't react outwardly, but her eyes narrowed slightly. Then we played the audio, the argument, the threat, the silence that followed. When it ended, Detective Alvarez leaned back in her chair, her hands folding together in front of her. "That's significant," she said carefully. "Significant!" I repeated, my voice tightening. She said she was afraid of him. He threatened her. He was using her identity. And now she's dead. "I understand why you're concerned," Alvarez said evenly. "And I'm not dismissing any of this. But I need to be clear about something." I held her gaze. "This alone," she continued, "is not proof of homicide." The words hit harder than I expected. "So what is it?" I asked. "Just a coincidence. She's terrified of her husband planning to leave him, and then she just loses control of her car and dies." Alvarez didn't answer right away. Instead, she tapped a pen lightly against the desk. "What this does," she said finally, "is give us reason to take a closer look." "A closer look," Danielle repeated. "Yes," Alvarez said. "At the accident. At the financial activity. At your son-in-law." I leaned forward. "Is that enough to reopen the case?" "It may be enough to re-examine certain aspects," she replied. "But we have to follow procedure. We need corroboration, physical evidence, something that connects intent to action." Intent to action. Emily had intent. Jason had motive. But we needed more. "Then we find it," I said. Alvarez studied me for a moment like she was measuring something. Then she nodded once. "Leave the laptop with me," she said, "and anything else you have. We'll review it all." I hesitated, not because I didn't trust her, but because this was everything. Emily's voice, her fear, her truth. And now I was handing it over. But I did it anyway. "Please," I said quietly, "don't let him get away with this." Alvarez met my eyes. "I won't promise anything I can't guarantee," she said. "But I will tell you this. We don't ignore evidence like this. That was enough. For now." When we left the station, the sky was beginning to lighten slightly, the first hint of dawn creeping in. But I didn't feel relief. Not yet. Because even as we walked to the car, I knew something else. Jason wasn't done. Not even close. The next 2 days were different. Not quiet. Not peaceful. But tense. Like something was building just beneath the surface. Jason called twice. I didn't answer. He left messages concerned, controlled, carefully worded. "Lauren, I haven't heard from you. I just want to make sure Sophie's okay. I think we need to talk about moving forward." Always that phrase. Moving forward. Like Emily was already behind us. Like she was something to be managed. On the 3rd day, he showed up again. This time, he didn't knock. He walked straight into the house like he still belonged there. I was in the living room when I heard the door open. My body tensed immediately. "Lauren," his voice called out. I stood up slowly as he stepped into the room. He looked different. Not grieving. Not even pretending to. Focused. Alert. Like he was on a mission. "We need to talk," he said. "I think we've done enough talking," I replied. His eyes flickered slightly at that. Then he smiled. That same polite, controlled smile. "This isn't about us," he said. "It's about Sophie. And Emily's things." There it was again. Emily's things. "What about them?" I asked. "I need to go through them," he said. "There are documents, accounts, insurance. I have to handle it." I crossed my arms. "I told you, I said it's too soon." His jaw tightened. "It's not too soon for responsibilities," he said. "No," I replied quietly. "But it is too soon for you to start deciding everything." For a moment, the air between us shifted, tightened. Something darker slipped through the cracks of his composure. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "I don't think I am," I said. He took a step closer. "Lauren," he said, his voice lower now. "You don't understand what's at stake here." The words sent a chill down my spine. "What's at stake?" I asked. He hesitated. Just for a second. Then he stepped back, the mask sliding back into place. "I'm trying to take care of my family," he said. I held his gaze. "No," I said. "You're trying to control it." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. His eyes flicked briefly toward the hallway, then toward the stairs. Scanning. Again. Looking. Searching. And in that moment, everything became clear. He wasn't here for Sophie. He wasn't here to grieve. He was here to find something. Something he hadn't found yet. Something he needed. "Whatever you're looking for," I said quietly, "you're not going to find it here." His eyes snapped back to mine. For the first time, I saw it. Not grief, not frustration, fear. It was quick, almost gone before I could fully process it, but it was there, and that was all I needed, because it confirmed everything. He knew. He knew there was something out there that could expose him, and he was running out of time to find it. He forced a small laugh. "I don't know what you mean," he said. "Of course you don't," I replied. We stood there for a moment longer, locked in something that no longer felt like conversation. It felt like a standoff. Then without another word, Jason turned and walked toward the door. "I'll be back," he said over his shoulder. I didn't respond. I just watched him leave, listened to the door close. And then I exhaled slowly, my hands shaking slightly. Danielle stepped out from the kitchen where she had been listening. "He's getting desperate," she said. I nodded. "Yes," I said. And as I looked toward the door, a single thought settled firmly into place. Whatever Emily had found, whatever she had hidden, it wasn't just enough to scare Jason. It was enough to destroy him, and now he was running out of time. That night after Jason left the house didn't feel like mine anymore. Not because anything had changed physically, but because I could feel it. The pressure, the urgency, the sense that we were running out of time. Danielle stayed. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew it wasn't safe for me to be alone, not now. Not after what we had found, and not after the way Jason had looked at me. That look. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't even anger. It was calculation, and that frightened me more than anything else. We double-checked the locks before going upstairs. Sophie was already asleep, curled up under the blankets, her breathing soft and steady. I stood in the doorway for a moment longer than I meant to, watching her. Emily's eyes, Emily's smile. Everything that mattered. Everything I had left. I closed the door gently. Lauren Danielle said quietly from the hallway, "We should go through the rest of the files." I nodded. Back downstairs, the laptop sat on the table where we had left it earlier, the empty USB slot staring back at me like an open question. Detective Alvarez had the flash drive now, which meant whatever we had seen wasn't all there was. Emily wouldn't leave just one copy. She wouldn't take that risk. "She made backups," I said suddenly. Danielle looked up. "You think so, I know." So I replied. Emily didn't trust easily, not by the end. If she hid one set of files, she hid another. Danielle considered that. Then where, she asked. I sat down slowly, my mind retracing everything we had seen. The notebook. The P.O. box receipt. The star symbol. SB. I reached for the notebook again, flipping to the last page. "There has to be more," I murmured. Danielle leaned over my shoulder. "Maybe SB isn't a place," she said. "Maybe it's a person." I looked at her. "Who?" She hesitated. "Someone Emily trusted," she said. "Someone Jason wouldn't suspect." I thought about that. Emily's world had been shrinking in the past year. Fewer calls, fewer visits, less time with friends, but not completely isolated. "She still saw people at work," I said. Danielle nodded. "And she had me," she added quietly. I met her eyes. "You said she mentioned a storage folder once," I said. Danielle froze. "Just slightly." "I did," she said slowly. "What exactly did she say?" I asked. Danielle took a breath. She didn't explain it fully, she admitted. She just said, if anything ever happened, there was a backup somewhere safe. My pulse quickened. "Why didn't you tell me that before I asked?" Danielle looked down. "Because I didn't think it would come to this," she said. "I thought she was just being cautious. I didn't think—" Her voice broke slightly. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "It's okay," I said gently. "We know now." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I just don't know where she would put it," she said. I looked back at the notebook again, at the small star, at the letters beside it. SB. And then something clicked. Not fully, not clearly, but enough. "Sophie's box," I said. Danielle blinked. "What?" "The memory box," I clarified. "The one she brought from home." "We already checked that," Danielle said. "Not everything," I replied. She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay," she said. Let's check again." We went upstairs quietly, careful not to wake Sophie. The hallway felt darker this time, heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath. I opened the door to the spare room and crossed to the box. This time I didn't rush. I took everything out slowly, one piece at a time. Drawings, cards, old school assignments. But instead of just looking at them, I felt them. Pressed along the edges, folded corners, anything that might be hidden. Danielle watched in silence. Then I picked up one of the drawings. A simple picture stick figures a house, a sun in the corner. At first glance, nothing unusual, but when I turned it over, I saw it. A faint line along the back, like it had been glued, carefully. My heart started pounding. "Danielle," I whispered. She stepped closer. "What is it?" I didn't answer. I just slid my finger along the edge and gently pulled. The paper separated, and inside, there was something small, flat, folded. I carefully pulled it out. Another flash drive, smaller than the first, hidden, protected. Exactly where Jason would never think to look. Danielle let out a slow breath. "She really did it," she said. I nodded. "Yes," I said. "She did." We didn't open it right away, not upstairs, not near Sophie. We went back down to the kitchen, closing the door behind us. For a moment, I just stared at it in my hand. This was it. The backup. The thing Emily had trusted would be found. If something happened to her, my fingers trembled slightly as I inserted it into the laptop. The screen flickered. A new folder appeared, labeled, not with a random name, not hidden, but clear, intentional. For Mom. My breath caught. Danielle covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God!" I clicked it. Inside were fewer files than the first drive, but they felt different, more deliberate, more final. The first file was a video. I hesitated for only a second before pressing play. Emily appeared on the screen again, but this time, she looked different, calmer, resolved, like she had already made a decision. "Mom," she said softly, her eyes meeting the camera. "If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it out in time." My chest tightened. "I wanted to tell you everything in person," she continued, "but I was afraid he would find out." I felt my throat close. "I know you've probably already seen some of the evidence," she said, "but there's more." Her voice steadied. "Jason isn't just moving money through my accounts. He's doing it through his company too. There are clients involved, shell accounts. It's bigger than I thought." Danielle leaned closer to the screen. "He's not just lying to me," Emily said. "He's stealing. And if I expose him, he could lose everything." She paused. "And that's what scares me." Silence. Then she spoke again. "I've already contacted a lawyer," she said, "and I'm meeting with someone from his company's compliance office tomorrow morning." Tomorrow morning. I felt a chill run through my body. That meeting never happened. I was going to take Sophie and leave. Emily continued. "I had a plan. I was almost ready." Tears filled my eyes. "Mom, if anything happens to me, please don't let him take control of Sophie. Please don't let him rewrite what happened." Her voice broke slightly. "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I didn't want to put you in danger." Danger. The word echoed in my mind. Emily took a breath, steadying herself. "I love you," she said softly, "and I love Sophie more than anything." The video ended. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Unbearable. but beneath it, something else. Clarity. Sharp. Unavoidable. She was going to expose him, Danielle whispered. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. And he knew, she added. I looked at the screen, at the empty space where Emily had been just seconds before. Yes, I repeated. He knew. He knew she had evidence. He knew she was leaving. He knew she was about to destroy everything he had built. And then she died. I closed the laptop slowly, my hands no longer shaking. Because now there was no more doubt, no more uncertainty, only truth. And that truth was darker than anything I had allowed myself to believe before. This wasn't just about fear. This wasn't just about control. This wasn't just about money. This was about motive. Clear, powerful, dangerous. And as I sat there in the quiet of my kitchen holding the last thing my daughter had left for me, I understood something that changed everything. Jason hadn't just been hiding something. He had been trying to stop something. And Emily had gotten too close. I didn't cry after watching Emily's final video. Not because I didn't want to, but because something inside me had shifted beyond tears. Grief was still there, deep, aching, permanent, but now it was anchored to something stronger. Truth. And once you see the truth clearly enough, you can't go back to being just a grieving mother. You become something else. Someone who has to act. The next morning, I called Detective Alvarez. I didn't wait for her to respond to messages. I didn't hesitate. "This is Lauren Ferguson," I said when she picked up. "I have more evidence." There was a pause. Then her voice steady and alert. "I'm listening." "We found a second flash drive," I said. "Emily left it hidden. There's a video she explains everything. She was about to expose Jason. She had a meeting scheduled with his company's compliance office the morning after she died." Another pause. Longer this time. "That changes things," Alvarez said. "I thought it might," I replied. "Bring it in," she said. "Immediately." This time when we walked into the station, the atmosphere felt different. Not quiet, not routine. Focused. We were taken straight to Alvarez's office. No waiting, no small talk. I placed the flash drive on her desk. "This is everything she wanted me to know," I said. Alvarez nodded once and plugged it into her computer. We watched the video again. But this time, I wasn't just a mother watching her daughter. I was a witness. And Alvarez was watching like an investigator, every word, every pause, every detail. When it ended, she leaned back slowly. "That's intent," she said. Danielle spoke first. Intent for what Alvarez didn't hesitate. Intent to expose financial crimes, she said, and potentially a motive for silencing her. The word hung in the air. Silencing. Not accident, not tragedy, something deliberate. My chest tightened, but I didn't look away. "What happens now?" I asked. Alvarez folded her hands. "Now we move faster," she said. "We already had reason to re-examine the financials. This gives us direction. And the meeting she mentioned, that's critical." She turned to her computer, typing quickly. "If she scheduled a meeting with compliance, there will be a record," she said. "Emails? Logs? Something." "And Jason?" Danielle asked. Alvarez glanced up. "We don't bring him in yet," she said. "Not until we have enough to make it count." I frowned. "He's already suspicious," I said. "He's been coming to my house, asking about documents, looking for things." Alvarez's expression sharpened. "Then you need to be careful," she said. "Don't confront him. Don't let him know what you have." Too late for that. I thought of the way he had looked at me, the fear, the calculation. I think he already knows he's in trouble, I said quietly. Alvarez didn't argue. Then we assume he's going to escalate, she said. The word landed heavily. Escalate, how Danielle asked. Pressure, Alvarez replied. Control. Maybe even legal action. That part I hadn't fully considered, but I should have, because Jason didn't just want the evidence. He wanted control over the narrative, over the assets, over Sophie. And if he couldn't get it quietly, he would try something else. I didn't have to wait long to find out what that was. 2 days later, I received a letter, certified mail, from Jason's attorney. My hands were steady as I opened it. But my heart was already bracing. Lauren Danielle asked from across the room. I didn't answer right away. I just read, and the more I read, the colder I felt. He's filing for custody, I said finally. Danielle froze. What? He's claiming I'm interfering, I continued, that I'm emotionally unstable, that I'm trying to turn Sophie against him. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. Unstable. After everything. After what he had done. He's trying to get control, Danielle said. Yes, I replied, and he's doing it fast. I looked down at the letter again. There it was, clear as day. Jason Carter was not just defending himself, he was attacking, strategically, legally. And if he succeeded, Sophie would be forced back into his care, back into his control. The thought made my chest tighten. No, I said quietly. Danielle looked at me. I'm not letting that happen, I said. That same afternoon, I met with Gregory Walsh. He came highly recommended, experienced, sharp, the kind of attorney who didn't waste time on empty reassurances. He listened as I explained everything. The accident, the evidence, the flash drives, the custody filing. He didn't interrupt, didn't react, just listened. When I finished, he leaned back slightly in his chair. You're in a difficult position, he said. I know, I replied. But not an impossible one, he added. I held his gaze. What do we need? I asked. Documentation, he said. A clear timeline. Evidence of your son-in-law's behavior. Anything that shows he is not a safe or stable guardian. I nodded. We have recordings, I said. Threats. Financial manipulation. That's a strong start, he said, but we need to connect it to Sophie, to show risk. Risk. I thought of the way she flinched, the way she asked if he was gone, the way she whispered about leaving. She's afraid of him, I said. Walsh's expression softened slightly. Then we make sure the court understands that he said. I exhaled slowly. For the first time in days, I felt something close to control. Not over everything, but enough. That night, Sophie sat beside me on the couch, her small body pressed against mine. Grandma, she said quietly. Yes, sweetheart. Is Daddy mad at me? The question hit me harder than anything else had that day. No, I said gently. He's not mad at you. She looked down at her hands. He sounded mad on the phone, she whispered. My heart tightened. What did he say? She hesitated. Just that I should come home soon, she said. That things would be easier if I did. Easier. The word felt wrong, cold, calculated. You don't have to go anywhere you're not comfortable, I said softly. She nodded, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. And I understood something then. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was psychological. Jason wasn't just trying to win in court. He was trying to shape the story, to make himself look like the victim, to make me look like the problem. And if we weren't careful, he might succeed. Later that night, after Sophie had gone to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table again. But this time, I wasn't surrounded by questions. I was surrounded by evidence. Emily's voice, her fear, her plan, her truth. And I realized something I hadn't fully allowed myself to see before. Jason wasn't just dangerous because of what he had done. He was dangerous because of what he was still willing to do. The lies, the manipulation, the legal pressure, the way he was moving so quickly to regain control. That wasn't grief. That was strategy. And strategies can be broken, but only if you see them clearly. I looked down at the documents in front of me, my mind sharper, now more focused. We had the recordings, we had the timeline inconsistencies, we had the financial evidence, and now we had motive. Clear. Undeniable. But we still needed one thing. The connection. The piece that tied everything together. The piece that would make it impossible for him to walk away. And as I sat there thinking through everything we had uncovered, a quiet realization settled into place. We were closer than we thought. Much closer. And Jason was running out of time. Jason's custody filing changed everything. Up until that point, I had been reacting following Emily's trail, piecing together what she had left behind. But now the timeline wasn't just emotional or investigative. It was legal, structured, unforgiving. And if I made the wrong move even once, I could lose Sophie. The hearing was scheduled quickly. Too quickly, in my opinion. But Gregory Walsh assured me that this was typical when a parent filed for immediate custody concerns. Jason is trying to establish urgency, he explained as we sat in his office reviewing documents. He wants the court to believe Sophie is being kept from him unfairly. He's trying to make me look unstable, I said. Yes, Walsh replied plainly. And unless we counter that with evidence, it could work. The bluntness didn't upset me. It grounded me, because I didn't have time for comfort anymore. I had time for truth. The next few days became a blur of preparation. Walsh helped me organize everything into a clear chronological timeline. Emily opening a separate account. Suspicious transfers. The notebook entries. The argument in the hospital parking lot. The recordings, the hidden flash drives, the planned meeting with compliance. Each piece on its own was troubling. Together, they told a story, not just of financial misconduct, but of escalation, control, fear, and a woman trying to get out before it was too late. We're not accusing him of murder in this hearing, Walsh reminded me. That's not the purpose here. Then what is I asked? To show the court that Jason Carter is not a safe or stable guardian for Sophie, he said. And that you are. Simple. Clear. But the weight of it? That was something else entirely. The night before the hearing, Sophie came into my room. She stood in the doorway for a moment before speaking. Grandma, she said softly. I looked up from the papers in my lap. Come here, sweetheart, I said. She walked over slowly and climbed onto the bed beside me. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she leaned into me. Do I have to go back with Dad? She asked. The question pierced straight through me. No, I said gently. Not unless it's what's best for you. She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine. I don't want to go, she whispered. I wrapped my arm around her. You don't have to decide anything tonight, I said softly. Just know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. She nodded, pressing closer. After a moment, she spoke again. Grandma, can I tell you something? Of course, she hesitated. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. The night Mom died, Dad left the house. My body went still. What do you mean? I asked carefully. He was mad, she said. They were arguing. I heard them. My pulse quickened. Do you remember what they were arguing about? Sophie shook her head. No, but Mom was crying. I closed my eyes briefly, steadying myself. And your dad? I asked. He left, she said. He slammed the door. What time was that? I asked gently. I don't know, she said. It was dark. I nodded slowly. That's okay, I said. You're doing really well. She looked up at me again. Is that bad? She asked. I chose my words carefully. It's important, I said. It helps us understand what happened. She nodded, then rested her head against my shoulder. Within minutes, she was asleep. But I didn't move. I just sat there holding her, my mind racing. Jason had told the police he was home that night. He had implied he was waiting for Emily. But Sophie's memory, it didn't match. And children, they don't always remember details, but they remember feelings. Mom crying, Dad angry, door slamming. Those things stay. The next morning, I told Walsh everything. He listened carefully, then leaned back in his chair. That's significant, he said. Is it enough? I asked. It strengthens our position, he replied, especially combined with everything else. But I pressed. But we have to be careful how we present it, he said. Sophie is a child. We don't want to put her under pressure. I understand, I said. And there's something else, he added. What? If Jason gave a different timeline to the police? And this contradicts it. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. It meant Jason had lied. Officially. And lies. They unravel. The courthouse felt colder than I expected. Not physically. Emotionally. Sterile. Unforgiving. Jason was already there when we arrived. He stood near the front speaking quietly with his attorney. When he saw me, his expression didn't change. Not even slightly. But his eyes locked onto mine. And for a moment the world around us faded. It was just the two of us, standing on opposite sides of something that could no longer be undone. Then Sophie stepped closer to me, and the moment broke. Jason looked down at her. Sophie, he said softly. She didn't respond, didn't move, just stayed beside me. And that said more than anything else could have. Inside the courtroom, everything moved quickly. Jason's attorney spoke first. Calm, confident, well prepared. He painted a picture of a grieving father. A man trying to reconnect with his daughter after a devastating loss. A man being unfairly blocked by an overprotective, emotionally unstable grandmother. I sat there listening, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Every word felt like a distortion, a manipulation, a carefully crafted version of reality that ignored everything that mattered. Then it was our turn. Walsh stood. And unlike Jason's attorney, he didn't rush, he didn't dramatize. He simply presented the facts, one by one, clear, precise, unavoidable. Emily's fear, the financial irregularities, the recordings, the evidence of control, the inconsistencies in Jason's behavior, and finally, Sophie's statement. Not as an accusation, not as proof, but as context, as truth. The courtroom fell silent as he finished. The judge looked down at the documents in front of her, her expression unreadable. Then she looked up. At me, at Jason, at Sophie, and for a moment, no one spoke. Then Jason shifted in his seat, just slightly, but I saw it. The tension, the crack, the beginning of something breaking. Because for the first time, he wasn't controlling the story. And without that control, he looked different, less certain, less untouchable. The hearing wasn't over. Not yet, but something had changed. Something fundamental, because the truth, it was no longer hidden. And once the truth starts to surface, it doesn't stop. The judge didn't rule that day, not fully, but what she did say changed everything. Sophie will remain with her grandmother until further notice, she announced, her voice steady, measured. This court requires additional review before any permanent custody decision is made. Relief washed over me so suddenly, I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was time. And right now, time was everything. Jason didn't look at me as we stood to leave the courtroom. His jaw was tight, his movements controlled, but there was something different about him now. Not confidence, pressure. The kind that builds when things stop going your way. Outside the courtroom, Walsh leaned in slightly. "That was good," he said quietly. "Very good." "It doesn't feel like enough," I replied. "It's a start," he said. "And right now that's what we need." Danielle joined us moments later, her expression tense. "Detective Alvarez called," she said. My heart skipped. While we were inside, she said, "She wants to see you. Today." The station felt different this time. Not quieter, not calmer, sharper. Focused in a way that made my chest tighten before I even stepped into Alvarez's office. She didn't waste time. We re-examined the vehicle, she said, as soon as we sat down. My breath caught, and I asked. Alvarez turned her monitor toward us. "Initially, the accident was classified as a loss of control," she said. "Weather conditions, wet road, limited visibility." I nodded slowly. "That's what we were told." "Yes," she said. "But that assessment was incomplete." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean?" She clicked something on the screen. A close-up image appeared. Metal. Damaged. Sharp edges. The brake line, she said. Specifically, the rear hydraulic line. Danielle leaned forward. "What about it?" Alvarez's voice remained calm. "It shows signs of damage that are inconsistent with normal wear or accident-related impact." My heart started pounding. Inconsistent, how I asked. She turned slightly in her chair, facing me directly now. "It appears to have been compromised before the crash," she said. The words landed slowly, heavily. "Compromised," I repeated. "Yes," she said, "cut or partially severed. Enough to weaken braking performance over time." The room seemed to tilt. "So, you're saying—" I couldn't finish. "I'm saying," Alvarez continued carefully, "that this may not have been an accident." Silence. Thick. Unbearable. Danielle covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God." I stared at the image on the screen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. The brake line. Damaged. Not by chance. Not by weather. By intent. "This changes the investigation," Alvarez said. "Significantly?" I swallowed hard. "Do you have proof it was Jason?" I asked. Alvarez shook her head slightly. "Not yet," she said. "But we're getting closer." She clicked again. Another image appeared. A grainy still frame. A gas station. A timestamp. This is from a security camera approximately 2 miles from the accident site, she explained. I leaned closer. There on the edge of the frame, a vehicle. Familiar. Too familiar. That's... I started. Jason's car, Alvarez confirmed. The timestamp burned into my eyes, minutes before the estimated time of the crash. He said he was home, I whispered. Yes, Alvarez said. He did. My chest tightened. He lied. Yes. The word echoed in the room. Simple. Final. Damning. Danielle turned toward me slowly. This is it, she said. This is the connection. But Alvarez didn't look convinced. Not quite, she said. I blinked. What do you mean the brake line was damaged? His car was near the scene. He lied about his location. All of which is highly suspicious, she interrupted gently, but not yet conclusive. Frustration surged through me. Then what else do you need, I asked. Direct linkage, she said. Something that places him in contact with the vehicle. Something that shows intent beyond reasonable doubt. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. He had motive, I said. Emily was going to expose him. She had evidence. She was leaving him. I agree, Alvarez said. And we're building that case. But we have to do it right. Right, carefully, by the book. Because if they didn't, he could walk. The thought made my stomach turn. What about the company, Danielle asked? The compliance meeting Emily mentioned? Alvarez nodded. We've reached out, she said. There was a scheduled appointment. Confirmed. My pulse quickened. And she never showed, Alvarez said. Of course she didn't. She never got the chance. But here's where it gets interesting, Alvarez continued. She pulled up another document. Jason's company has flagged irregularities, she said. Accounts that don't add up. Transfers that can't be easily explained. I leaned forward. Do they suspect him? They're starting to, she said. That was something. Not everything, but something. Financial crimes take time to unravel, Alvarez added. But combined with what we're seeing here... She didn't finish. She didn't have to. It was building. Slowly. Piece by piece. Towards something undeniable. When I left the station, the air felt heavier than before. Not because I was uncertain anymore, but because I wasn't. This wasn't a possibility. This wasn't a suspicion. This was real. Emily hadn't lost control of her car. Someone had taken that control from her. And every path, every piece of evidence, was leading back to Jason. That evening I sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. Sophie was inside watching television quietly, her laughter faint but present. It should have comforted me, and part of it did, but the rest of me was somewhere else. Back at that image, that brake line, that moment where everything changed. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world, Danielle said as she stepped outside. I gave a small, humorless smile. Something like that. She sat beside me. They're getting closer, she said. Yes, I replied. But so is he, she added. I turned to look at her. What do you mean he's losing control? She said. The custody case didn't go his way. The evidence is stacking up. People like him, they don't handle that well. A cold realization settled in my chest. You think he'll do something? I think he already has, she said quietly. The question is, what's he willing to do next? I looked out at the darkening street, my mind racing. Jason wasn't just a man under investigation. He was a man being cornered, and cornered people. They don't always make rational choices. I thought about Sophie, about the way she clung to me, about the fear in her eyes, and I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. Because if Jason had been willing to tamper with a car, if he had been willing to risk everything to stop Emily, then there was no telling what he might do now. And as that thought settled into place, heavy and unavoidable, one thing became clear. We weren't just uncovering the truth anymore. We were running out of time to stop him. Sleep stopped coming easily after that. Not because I was afraid of the dark, but because I was afraid of what was happening in the light. Every hour that passed felt like a race between the truth surfacing and Jason finding a way to stay ahead of it. He was being watched now, investigated, questioned quietly through channels I couldn't see, but he was still free, still walking, still thinking, and that made him dangerous. 2 days after my meeting with Detective Alvarez, she called again. "Lauren," she said, her voice more urgent than before. "We need you to come in." My heart tightened. "Did something happen?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "And it may be the piece we've been waiting for." When I arrived at the station, Danielle was already there. She must have gotten the same call. We were taken into a different room this time. Not Alvarez's office. An interview room, the kind with a table in the center and nothing else to distract you. Alvarez stood near the far wall, arms crossed, her expression sharper than I had ever seen it. "He slipped," she said. I blinked. "Jason." She nodded. "We brought him in for questioning this morning," she said. "Nothing formal. Just conversation." And Danielle asked. Alvarez stepped forward and placed a folder on the table. "He knows more than he should," she said. My pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" She opened the folder and turned it toward us. Inside was a transcript. "Read this," she said. My hands were steady as I picked it up. But my chest was already bracing. Transcript, excerpt. Detective Alvarez. "Can you walk us through the night of the accident again?" Jason Carter. "I was home, waiting for Emily. She said she'd be late." Detective Alvarez. "What time did she usually take that route?" Jason Carter. "Around 8:30. That curve on Route 17 is dangerous when it rains." I stopped reading, slowly, deliberately, and looked up. He wasn't supposed to know that I said. Alvarez nodded. "No," she said. "He wasn't." Danielle leaned closer. "What do you mean?" Alvarez pointed to the transcript. "The specific curve on Route 17 where the accident occurred. That detail was never released publicly," she said. "Not in reports, not in the media." A cold wave spread through my body. "He described it," I whispered. "Yes," Alvarez said. "Accurately." Danielle exhaled sharply. "So he knew where it happened. More than that," Alvarez said. "He knew when she would be there." I felt my stomach drop. The room suddenly felt too small, too tight. "He's placing himself in the timeline," I said slowly. Alvarez didn't respond, but she didn't need to, because we all understood what it meant. Jason hadn't just slipped. He had revealed knowledge he couldn't explain. And once that kind of crack appears, everything starts to break. "There's more," Alvarez said. She turned another page in the transcript. I forced myself to keep reading. "Detective Alvarez. Did you see Emily before she left for work?" Jason Carter. "No. She left before I got home." Detective Alvarez. "That's interesting, because we have reason to believe you were at the house earlier." Jason Carter. "I might have stopped by. I don't remember exactly." I felt my grip tighten on the paper. He's changing his story, I said.
Yes,
Alvarez confirmed.
and not carefully.
Danielle looked up.
That's good, right? It means pressure is working,
Alvarez said.
but it also means he's unpredictable now.
Unpredictable. The words settled heavily in the room. I set the transcript down slowly.
So what happens now?
I asked. Alvarez took a breath. Now we move forward, she said.
With everything.
Charges? Danielle asked. Not yet, Alvarez replied, but we're close. How close I pressed. She met my eyes. Close enough that he knows it, she said. That was the part that worried me. Not the evidence, not the case, but the fact that Jason knew. Because men like him, they don't just wait. They react. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. I glanced down. Jason. Calling. Right now. I felt a chill run through me. He's calling, I said, quietly. Alvarez's expression hardened. Answer it, she said. My heart skipped. Here. Yes, she said. Put it on speaker. I hesitated for only a second before answering. Hello? There was a pause. Then Jason's voice. Lauren. Calm. Controlled. But there was something underneath it. Something strained.
I need to talk to you,
he said.
I'm busy,
I replied.
It won't take long,
he said.
This is important.
I glanced at Alvarez. She nodded slightly.
Go ahead,
I said. Another pause.
Then, you've been talking to the police?
Jason said.
Not a question.
A statement. My chest tightened. I don't know what you mean, I replied carefully. Don't do that, he said.
Not with me.
His voice had changed. Less controlled. Sharper.
I know what you're doing,
he continued.
You're trying to turn this into something it's not.
Something it's not. The words echoed.
You should be careful, Lauren,
he added. A chill ran down my spine.
Careful of what I asked.
Silence. Then,
of what you think you understand,
he said. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a moment, my heart pounding. Alvarez stepped forward. That's a threat, she said. Yes, I whispered. Danielle shook her head. He's panicking, she said. No, I said slowly. He's not panicking. They both looked at me. He's trying to control the narrative again, I continued. He thinks he can still shape this. Alvarez nodded. Then we take that away from him, she said. Later that day, another piece fell into place. Danielle called me just as I was pulling into my driveway. Lauren, she said, her voice tight. I remembered something. What Emily's meeting, she said. The compliance one. My pulse quickened. What about it? She wasn't going alone, Danielle said. I froze. What do you mean? She told me. She said someone from inside the company had agreed to meet her too, Danielle said. Someone who knew what Jason was doing. A witness. My heart started racing. Do you know who I asked? There was a pause.
Then I think I do,
Danielle said. That night I sat in my living room, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The evidence, the lies, the threats, the witness. We were so close now, closer than we had ever been, and Jason, he could feel it. That much was clear, which meant one thing. He wasn't going to wait for the truth to catch up to him. He was going to try to outrun it, or worse, destroy it. And as I sat there in the quiet, staring at the shadows stretching across the walls, one thought settled firmly into place. This wasn't just a fight for justice anymore. It was a race. And if we didn't move fast enough, Jason might find one last way to slip through our fingers. By the time Jason was arrested, I already knew it was coming. Not because someone had told me, but because the air had changed. There's a moment right before everything breaks open when the tension shifts, when the waiting ends and the truth stops hiding. That morning, Detective Alvarez called just after sunrise. "Lauren," she said, her voice steady but firm. "We have enough." I closed my eyes for a brief second, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. Enough for what I asked, even though I already knew. "To bring him in," she said. "Formally." My chest tightened. "Today?" "Yes." Jason Carter was arrested that afternoon. Charges were filed quickly: financial fraud, identity manipulation, and obstruction related to the investigation. The charge connected to Emily's death wasn't finalized yet, but it was coming. We all knew it. And so did he. I didn't go to the station when they arrested him. I didn't need to see it. I didn't need to watch the man who had stood beside my daughter for years be led away in handcuffs. Because for me, the moment had already happened. The moment I saw the brake line. The moment I heard his voice on that recording. The moment I realized Emily had been right to be afraid. That was when Jason Carter stopped being part of my family. But I did go to the preliminary hearing. Not for him. For Emily. The courtroom was fuller this time. More people. More attention. Word had started to spread, not publicly, not widely, but enough that the atmosphere felt different. Charged. Heavy. Jason sat at the defense table, his hands clasped in front of him. For the first time since all of this began, he didn't look in control. His suit was still pressed, his posture still straight, but the edges were gone. The certainty, the composure. In its place, something else. Strain. When his eyes lifted and met mine, there was no smile, no mask, just a flicker of something raw, and for a moment, I saw exactly who he was. Not the charming man from family dinners, not the grieving husband, but someone who had built his life on control and was now watching it slip away. The prosecutor spoke first. Clear, measured, unemotional. He laid out the timeline step by step. Emily's discovery of financial irregularities, the confrontation, the threats, the planned exposure, the brake line damage. Jason's presence near the scene, the inconsistencies in his statements. Each point landed like a stone, solid, unavoidable. There was no dramatic tone, no raised voice, just facts. And sometimes, facts are louder than anything else. Jason's attorney followed. Of course he did. And he did what defense attorneys do. He reframed, he questioned, he suggested alternative explanations. The brake line could have been damaged in the crash. The vehicle sighting could have been coincidence. Jason's statements could have been confusion under stress. Reasonable doubt. That was his job, and he did it well. But there was one thing he couldn't erase. Emily. When the recordings were introduced, the room shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, but you could feel it. The moment her voice filled the space, everything changed. "I'm scared." Those words echoed in the courtroom, soft, fragile, but impossible to ignore. Then the second recording. "You need to stop digging." Jason's voice. Colder now, sharper, stripped of context, stripped of excuses. Just what it was. a threat. I watched the judge as she listened. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes, they didn't look away. Then came the video, the one labeled for Mom. I hadn't watched it in a courtroom before. Not like this. Not with strangers. Not with the man who had caused it sitting just feet away. When Emily appeared on the screen, my breath caught. For a moment, it felt like she was there, not as evidence, not as memory, but as herself. Speaking, telling the truth. I was going to take Sophie and leave. The words hung in the air, and I saw it then. Jason's reaction, subtle, small, but real. His fingers tightened, his jaw shifted, and for the first time, he looked away. When the video ended, the silence in the courtroom was different, heavier, final, because it wasn't just about what had happened anymore. It was about who Emily had been and what she had been trying to do. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't careless. She wasn't someone who would simply lose control of her car on a rainy night. She was careful, thoughtful, prepared. And she had been planning her next move. Until she didn't get the chance, the judge called for a brief recess. People stood, moved, whispered, but I stayed where I was, my hands resting in my lap, my eyes fixed on the empty space where Emily's image had been, and for the first time since her funeral, I didn't feel lost. I felt clear, because the truth was no longer something I was chasing. It was something everyone could see. When the session resumed, the judge spoke. Her voice was calm, measured, but firm. Based on the evidence presented, she said this court finds sufficient cause to proceed with the charges currently filed and to continue investigation into the circumstances surrounding Emily Carter's death. My chest tightened. This is not a final determination of guilt, she continued, but it is clear that this matter warrants full legal examination. She paused, then added, and the court acknowledges the presence of credible evidence indicating both motive and potential premeditation. The words settled into the room like a verdict of their own. Not final, but undeniable. Jason didn't look at me as he was let out. Not this time. Maybe he couldn't. Or maybe he finally understood that the story he had tried to control was no longer his. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, lighter. Not because everything was over. It wasn't. There would be more hearings, more arguments, more waiting. But something fundamental had shifted. Justice had started, not quietly, not gently, but clearly. And as I stood there, Danielle beside me, Sophie holding my hand, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to feel until that moment. We had done it. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to bring the truth into the light. Enough to make sure Emily's voice wasn't buried with her, and enough to make sure Jason Carter would never control the story again. The house feels different now. Not empty, though it still is in ways that never quite go away, but quieter in a softer way. Not the kind of silence that presses on your chest, but the kind that settles gently around you like a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding for too long. It's been 8 months since that day in the courtroom. 8 months since Jason was taken away in handcuffs. 8 months since the truth began to surface piece by piece until there was nowhere left for it to hide. The trial itself is still ongoing. These things take time, but the foundation is there. The evidence, the recordings, the financial trail, the damaged brake line. All of it has held. All of it has mattered. And for the first time since Emily died, I no longer feel like I'm fighting alone. Sophie starts school in 10 minutes. I can hear her upstairs moving around her room, talking softly to herself, the way she always does when she's trying to decide between two outfits. Some things don't change, and thank God for that. I stand in the kitchen packing her lunch peanut butter sandwich apple slices, a small note folded neatly beside it. I've written one every day since she came to live with me. Sometimes it's something simple. Have a good day. Be kind. You are loved. Today I write, your mom would be so proud of you. I pause for a moment after writing it. Because I mean it. More than Sophie probably understands. More than I can fully explain. Emily would be proud of the way her daughter has held herself through all of this. The quiet strength, the resilience, the way she still laughs even after everything. She carries pieces of her mother in ways that make my chest ache and heal at the same time. Grandma Sophie calls from upstairs. Yes, sweetheart. Do I have to wear the blue one? I smile faintly. No. You can wear whichever one makes you feel happiest. There's a pause. Then, okay, footsteps follow. Light. Quick. Alive. I close my eyes for just a second, letting the sound settle into me. Because for a long time, there was only silence. The trial has brought out things I wish I had never had to hear. Details about Jason's financial crimes accounts. I didn't know existed clients who had been affected layers of deception that went far beyond our family. But none of it surprised me anymore. Not after everything we uncovered. What did surprise me was how many people came forward. Employees from his company, clients, even one of the compliance officers Emily had planned to meet. They all had pieces, fragments, suspicions they had never been able to prove on their own. Until now. Until Emily. Because she had done something none of them had been able to do. She had connected it, documented it, prepared to expose it. And even though she didn't get the chance, she still changed everything. I visit her grave once a week, sometimes alone, sometimes with Sophie. Today it's just me. The air is cool, the sky clear in that quiet, steady way that feels almost respectful. I stand in front of her headstone, my hands folded loosely in front of me. Hi, sweetheart, I say softly. It still feels strange, talking to someone who isn't there. But also, it doesn't, because in some ways, she is. In Sophie, in the memories, in the strength I've had to find inside myself. I wish you could see her, I continue. She's doing so well, braver than I ever expected. I pause, swallow. And I wish you didn't have to be that brave. The wind moves gently through the trees. A quiet sound. Not an answer, but something close enough. They're listening now, I say. They hear you. They see what you were trying to do. I take a slow breath. You didn't lose your voice, Emily, I whisper. Not really, because that's the truth. Her voice is everywhere now. In courtrooms, in evidence files, in the lives of people who were affected by what Jason did, and most importantly, in the life she protected. That night, Sophie and I sit on the couch together. She leans against me, her head resting lightly on my shoulder. Grandma, she says. Yes. Do you think Mom knows what's happening? The question catches me off guard. I take a moment before answering. I think she knows we're okay, I say gently. Sophie nods slowly. I think so too, she says. We sit in silence for a moment. Then she speaks again. I had a dream about her last night. My heart tightens. What was it about? She was smiling. Sophie says, she told me not to be scared anymore. I close my eyes briefly, holding that image, that feeling. I think she'd want that, I say softly. Sophie shifts slightly, settling closer. I'm not scared anymore, she adds. And just like that, something inside me eases. Not completely. It never will. But enough. Later, after Sophie has gone to bed, I sit alone at the kitchen table. The same place where everything began to unravel. The same place where I first spread out Emily's notes. Where I followed the trail she left behind. And I think about everything that has happened since then. The fear, the anger, the long nights, the moments where I almost felt like I couldn't keep going. And I realized something I didn't fully understand before. This wasn't just about finding the truth. It was about choosing not to look away from it. Because it would have been easier to accept the accident, to grieve quietly, to let the questions fade. But Emily didn't choose easy. She chose truth. Even when it was dangerous. Even when it cost her everything. And in the end, that choice mattered. I stand up slowly and turn off the kitchen light. The house settles into darkness, but it doesn't feel heavy anymore. It feels still, peaceful. And as I walk toward the stairs, I pause for just a moment, looking back at the space where everything changed, where grief turned into something else, something stronger. And I allow myself one final thought before I go upstairs. Justice doesn't bring people back. It doesn't erase the loss. It doesn't fill the silence. But it does something just as important. It makes sure the truth survives. And sometimes, that's what healing begins with. Every story like this leaves something behind, not just pain, but a lesson. Sometimes the people closest to us carry secrets we never see. And sometimes the smallest signs, the pauses, the silences, the things left unsaid are the ones that matter most. I learned too late that love doesn't mean ignoring what feels wrong. It means paying attention even when it's uncomfortable. Emily tried to protect us. She tried to do the right thing even when she was afraid. And because of that, the truth didn't disappear with her. It waited. It endured. And eventually, it was heard. If there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's this: trust what you feel. Ask the questions. Don't turn away just because the answers might be hard. Because silence can protect the wrong person, and truth, no matter how delayed, still has power. Now I want to ask you, what would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have followed the signs or let them go? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story stayed with you, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps more stories like this reach people who need them. And before you go, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. You're not alone in listening to this.